One of the ways that we make loss and grief harder is that we get consumed in it. We get overwhelmed by it. Or we can go to the other end of the spectrum and be in denial, numb ourselves out to it by keeping busy, perhaps using substances, just trying to ignore it. Versus what mindfulness suggests we want to do, which is to be in that place of allowing and accepting and deeply feeling the loss and the grief, particularly in the body. Considering the fourth of our four conditions, which is social and cultural norms, I suspect that most of us have grown up with the experience of more or less being in denial about death and loss. Or if we're among those few where it was dealt with in a really meaningful way, we're very fortunate. But the overall culture, with its emphasis on youth, with its emphasis on delaying growing old, with putting senior citizens away and locking them up out of sight, is a very challenging experience for dealing with loss and grief. What we're pretty much doing when we deny the reality of loss, death, and the accompanying grief is that we're denying the 3 Ps. We're trying to make life permanent. We're trying to make it permanent or personal. Let's try again. We're trying to make it permanent. We're trying to make it perfect. And we're taking it personally. I want to share with you a story of someone's experience with loss and grief that I've heard about. This person, a few years ago, experienced the death of his wife of more than 40 years. They navigated life together. They dealt with all of the ups and downs of life. They dealt with having children, the loss of all 4 of their parents, all of the things that make life hard on a day-to-day basis. They worked together as partners with, and they felt a great sense of love for one another. And although she was sick for some time, and it was clear that she wasn't going to make it, the grief was still very powerful. And it's required several years of grieving, of attending to the grief, before a meaningful shift has occurred in that experience. And the loss and the grief are still evolving. But in this particular case, this man with full awareness embraced the grief that was present. There was no denial. There was no running away from it. There was no trying to speed it up. He got lots of help and support. He read a number of books about the grieving process. He attended seminars. He worked with a counselor. And the relentless message was, from all these sources, the importance of allowing the grief to unfold in its own way. That no 2 persons' experiences of grief are the same. And just because you've heard that one person had this experience doesn't mean that that's your experience. There is a degree of curiosity in learning, a willingness to learn about what this experience is like, what it means to be human and to be fully present. there was no sense of being a victim, of taking it personally. One of the really defining aspects of this man's wife was her enormous caring about the Christmas season, and in particular, a commitment to decorating the house. She was on the lookout throughout the year, over decades, for decorations for the house. And she had a place for every one of them. And in the last 2 or 3 years there she was alive, they often took pictures of the house. So in the few months after she died, this man was able to refer to the pictures and know where every decoration was to go. And in that first Christmas, he went out of his way to decorate the house exactly as they always had. To be close to her, to feel that connection, to allow it to be fully present. But an interesting thing began to happen in year 2, in year 3, in year 4. In each subsequent year, he made a little adjustment. He brought some new decorations in. He moved them around as a way of symbolizing how his relationship to her was changing, how his relationship to the grief and loss was changing. So even if he didn't have this as an intentional process at the outset, it became an essential part of the experience of grieving, of allowing it to unfold. And so today he's established a new way of being with his late wife. She is still very present in his life, but not principally as a loss or with regret or sadness. She's just present. What's been happening here with this man is that he's approached this experience from the perspective of being fully alive in every moment. There was next to no denial, resistance, or wishing things to be other than they are. When those inclinations crept into his being, he simply was aware of them. He embraced this experience. He was open about it. He was willing to talk to anybody about it. He was never offended or brought to his knees by somebody willing to talk about it. The loss and heartbreak, when we lose somebody with whom we're close, are an essential part of being human. In many ways, it's what defines us in our capacity to connect with one another, to have this sense of belonging that we talk about again and again, to have this deep caring for each other. How this process with the Christmas decorations unfolded is a great example of what we've been talking about with regard to think again, rethinking, being open to possibility, holding assumptions lightly, curiosity, and allowing. It's an opportunity there that is there for each of us. The pain of loss is enormous. We all know that. We've all experienced it in one specific way or another. And we can't escape it. And mindfulness offers us the opportunity to be with it without being overwhelmed by it and controlled by it, or to have to be in denial. Let's do a little practice. A great moment for a couple of deep breaths. Lots of cognitive processing, perhaps the arising of emotions. Take those deep breaths, allowing our lungs to fill all the way up to our shoulders. Holding that breath for a moment. And then that long, slow out breath, releasing extra energy and tension. And perhaps again. And settling in and softening with whatever experience is present in this moment. And turning to our breath, to our breathing, feeling a little reassurance that regardless, life flows on, our bodies know what to do, they know how to take care of us. Just focusing on where the in-breath shows up in the body, how the out-breath shows up. Concentrating our attention there for a few more moments. Now recalling an experience in your life of moderate loss. Not something huge, but a loss that was noteworthy, but not overwhelming. And thinking about the specifics. Who or what was lost, when it happened, who all was involved. And as you recall the experience, noticing the thoughts that are arising. Noticing them as observer. Noticing the emotions that are arising. Feeling them deeply without being consumed or overwhelmed or controlled by. Keeping just enough space and allowing whatever thoughts and emotions arise. Whatever is arising is okay. perhaps noticing how thoughts arise and fade away, how emotions arise and fade away. And noticing what bodily sensations are present. Gently focusing on a noticeable sensation in your body. Holding your attention there. Being aware of what's happening to the sensation. Is it growing stronger? Is it fading? Is it moving? Simply being aware. Being aware of this experience of loss, of the thoughts, emotions, and sensations. And now offering yourself some kindness for your willingness to be present to this experience. Some appreciation for this willingness. Perhaps acknowledging a little sense of joy for your willingness to be present.